Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Tennis Channel Inside In on the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. Mitch Michals from the Santa Monica studios into October, but the tennis grind does not stop. Joined now by a friend of the program, I think an official Wilson-sponsored athlete right now, and the only hedgehog owner that I know, Blair Henley. Welcome back to the program.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to occupy that space in your world, Mitch, as the only hedgehog owner that you know. I'm the only hedgehog owner that a lot of people know, which means I get a lot of hedgehog memes sent to me.
I would assume that's the case, and I made that comment too about the Wilson athletes, like you and Marta Kostyuk, and I know that she's got a big cheerleader on your hand every time she debuts a nice cardigan or something. You're the first to make it known how cool it is.
I'm all in, and people are like, well, yeah, because you actually are in, but no, for real, it is. I could purchase the entire Wilson website, and I tell all my friends that because it is the absolute truth.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, I got to speak with Marta before. She had a big win recently over on Jabeur, so that's good for her. Hope to chat with her again. I think I'm rocking the Marcos Caron Vori polo right now, so we're all just trying to level up a little bit.
A close second. Marcos has one of the coolest clothing sponsors on tour, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm going right to the gym to squat and leg press after this too, so that's the other side of that story, but I digress. It's always fun to chat with Blair here on this podcast about some of the stories you have, and getting to know, for those who are listening for the first time, Blair covers tennis around the country, travels to a lot of these tournaments in many roles, gets to know these players, gets to shoot some cool things that we'll get into with these players. The last time we chatted was in the spring. We were getting ready for a nice clay court season, and how time has flown since then. But I wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit, and there's a lot of different ways to go. But the U.S. Open, and we're going to kind of bounce around a little bit, though. But U.S. Open's always fun. You and another friend of this program, Nick McCarville, you guys got to, experience Kids Day and all the events, and you had different roles there. But I have to ask what it was like. I saw the sit down with Novak Djokovic before he won his 24th.
Yeah, it was part of the U.S. Open's fan-facing media day. This is the second year that they've done that. And so essentially, as the players are moving through their normal media day stops, they've added a live stop on the tour with fans. And we have been blessed with bad weather on that day the past 2 years, and so it's very convenient for fans to file in the closed Arthur Ashe Stadium. And this year they actually had us on this platform while practices were going on behind us, and it was really fantastic. It was packed. It's a really neat opportunity for fans to hear a live conversation. That entire fan week, by the way, is I'll say it's the best ticket in tennis. It's a free ticket. So it's the best ticket just by nature that it's free. But the stuff that you can experience as a tennis fan during fan week at the US Open is absolutely incredible. And that was one piece of that. But Novak, as always, was as thoughtful as you can get. He's just a thoughtful guy. He listens to your question. He does his best to actually give you specifics, which I always appreciate. We talked about, one thing that has been fascinating to me and watching him practice, particularly at the US Open. I've had a chance the last couple of times he was there to sort of see some of his practices up close. Yeah. He is making like minute technical adjustments. He's like pointing to his arm and his elbow and shifting the position a little bit. And it looks like they're actually making technical adjustments in these very close to tournament practices, which I find fascinating because I don't often think about athletes at the very highest level making technical adjustments that close to match play. That doesn't apply for him. And I asked about that. I said, is that the level that we're thinking even in a practice, maybe the day before you start your US Open? And he said, the devil is in the details. And has that not been the story of Novak Djokovic's career? He pays attention at this point. It wasn't always true at the beginning of his career, and he's evolved in many ways in terms of how he handles his actual tennis and his body off the court. But he is paying attention to every single thing about his game, his nutrition, his routine, his team, all the things. So that was really fun. And in addition to this story, I was able to, thanks to Infosys and the Hall of Fame, do a Q&A with Goran Ivanisevic on the day of the final, which I was kind of shocked that he said yes to. I was like, really? He said yes at the beginning of the tournament, by the way. So pre-tournament, he's like, yes,
like,
let's
we'll be
do a
there.
Q&A on finals day, which I think says something about the confidence level in that Djokovic team. But he's fascinating to talk to as well. He's got a great sense of humor for anyone who's had the chance to be around him or speak to him. You know, talks about them playing, and they're big. I guess the used to be Uno in Team Djokovic was like the big game, and now I believe it's Parcheesi is the one that they're super into. And he said, you know, sometimes depending on the day, depending on the mood, you just gotta let Novak win one every once in a while. Just gotta slide him a W. But he also the standout point from that conversation for me was him just sort of, I guess, explaining what the Djokovic mentality is moving forward, in that he said, listen, we thought at this point there would be people that were regularly challenging him, and there aren't. He said he described Alcaraz as special. He said, you know, he is a special talent. He is a potential generational talent. But there just haven't been that crop of regular challengers that they all thought would be coming eventually. And obviously part of that, is because Djokovic himself has maintained this incredible level. But he's like, well, it hasn't happened yet. So why not see what we can do?
Right. It's no fault of his. I mean, that's really good insight. But Djokovic keeps putting the work in, keeps, you know, maintaining his edge. We haven't seen that next generation outside of Alcaraz. We're starting to see signs of it, but will we see the next gen come through? That's a very fascinating story. It's you know, the devil is in the details for Djokovic. He finds a way to continually evolve and improve, like a chameleon out there. Speaking of which, I mean, you had a couple different roles at the U.S. Open. One was being a PA announcer for a little bit. Now, that's got to be a different kind of adrenaline rush, I would imagine.
Yes, when you have a person in front of you, there is room for a little bit of humanity, and by that I mean like ums and uhs, or the occasional conversational stumble. Although, of course, I try to have that not happen. But if it does, and you're hosting a live audience, it's a little bit different on a microphone when your voice is going out to over 20,000 people plus the broadcast. There's no room for error. So even though the job itself, you know, you're in a booth with my three other teammates, my producer, the DJ, and the sound guy for Ash. So it's not as high pressure in terms of, wow, there are a lot of eyeballs on you. It's kind of like being the catcher in baseball. Like if you mess up, people are going to know about it.
And you don't want to get rattled either, even if it's, you know, only a short job. It's an important job. So hypothetically, like, let's say, I don't know, a female player comes out and she quotes an iconic Rafa answer. How would you handle that situation?
So if she quotes an iconic Rafa answer,
check play, maybe. Yeah.
Yes. It took me a second. That's how scattered my brain is post US Open. But it was Karolina Muchova, of course, in her pre-match interview, which, as you know, rarely garners anything out of the ordinary. Although I gotta say, I don't know what players were thinking at the US Open this year. Maybe they're like, listen, we're gonna spice it up. Daria Kazatkina had me absolutely.
Like, normally they keep it moving. They're just like, hey, we got a big match here. Like, you're not trying to do anything crazy. Just keep it moving and focus on the task at hand.
Right. So anyway, yes, she quoted Rafa. Unfortunately, she didn't split happened into 3 syllables. It was not happened, but we'll give her a pass on that. But anyway, I chuckled because, of course, we're getting the live feed, and then my voice goes to broadcast after those pre-match interviews. So goes to the stadium and goes to broadcast. It was cool to be a part of history. There had never been a female voice on Ash doing that before. So it was me teaming up with the iconic Andy Taylor. But it was tough. It was tough in the sense that your voice is going out to the biggest tennis stadium in the world. but also for the walkouts to the broadcast. So the way that I would speak if I knew that I was just speaking to the house is probably more announcery, if you will. But the way that you want to do that to make your voice big without having it sound like, and now taking the court, you don't want it to be that cheesy announcer
Right. It's a skill
voice that we think of. When we think of the voice of God. So finding the balance between getting the attention of the live audience, which, who is multiple honeydews deep, and also the broadcast audience. It was an interesting challenge, and it was a cool additional skill to hone during the US Open.
That's a very good point. I also think it's kind of cool and symmetrical that this year, where there was the 50th anniversary, a lot of history on the WTA, you get to make history being the first woman to announce these players on Ash. It's very exciting. I also, from the US Open, just had a note that something's cool about celebrities watching tennis for the first time. It's like just watching their reaction to this sport and them discovering how intense it is. You can see their eyes just getting bigger, and just I'd even say like look of anxiety and even fear sometimes with how fast these points are.
Yes. Well, one of the things that we do in that Voice of God booth that I sit in, or when I'm doing that particular role, is the producer is hunting during the games with the camera people in the crowd for the celebrities. We have a list of who is sitting where, or who we think is sitting where. You have to make sure they're not in the restroom. If there's a particular musical artist, we have to get the DJ Triz, who's incredible, gets the right song keyed up and ready for the next changeover. So a lot of what they do in that booth is making sure they know who they're going to go to on the next changeover. And it's so funny to see, it's where we're looking, we're like, let's make sure, are we sure that that's who we think it is? And Googling pictures just to like triple check, because yes, you have this list, but you want to make sure you don't
wrong. Not necessarily tennis, but we've seen what happens when you're wrong. It's not pretty.
It's not pretty at all. So, but again, I thought the US Open did a great job of leveraging the fact that celebrities wanted to be there. I think it was Marty Fish who tweeted during the US Open, are there celebrities at the US Open? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was like the tweet I saw. Yeah, it's like the tweet I saw. Does anyone know if there's any moms playing?
Yes. I liked that, because gosh, man, we talk about it a lot. Yeah. But yes, I thought that part was cool. And I think that the US Open was the beneficiary of the writer's strike. Because you had a lot of celebrities who wanted to see and be seen and make appearances, and they headed to the blue carpet instead of the red carpet.
Right, we'll see how real they are, right? Like if they're like Leo and they're back every year, you're a real tennis fan. But some, aren't Leonardo DiCaprio's level of interest. They might be, unfortunately, one and done. The last thing on the Open was, did you have any interactions with now tennis diehard Jimmy Butler? I mean, other than allegedly, pointing him to a barber, which we saw at the Heat Media Day this week.
Yes, actually, he was part of the Stars of the Open event during Fan Week, which has been a massive success the past 2 years. They raised over $300,000 for Ukraine crisis relief, which is awesome. But he wanted to go into ball person training at the US Open. Like he wanted to do that. So he actually trained with the ball kids, got kitted up in the Polo Ralph Lauren ball kid outfit, as many people saw, and was like doing warm-ups in the green room. But Nick McCarville and I, before we walked out, we popped our head in. Our friend Amanda White is sort of the handler for a lot of those appearances. And so she's like, come on in, guys. This is Jimmy. And he's the most normal dude, other than the fact that he is massive. And that's saying something, because I have been around some massive humans in tennis. I am not a massive human. I am, as somebody called me on Twitter this week, a short queen, which I will take. He is a massive human, but just couldn't have been more normal and excited to be a part of the whole thing. We bonded over the fact that I lived in Houston for a long, long time. He's from Houston, and so talked all about that. And he was like the secondary star of the Open. So props to Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, and you do see, right, that singular focus. Like it's funny to talk about ball kid, but his love in tennis, like you see with these driven, successful athletes, that when they get their mind to something, it's no, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this to the best of my ability. Well, the other, go ahead.
One more behind the scenes nugget on that. Yeah. We were told Jimmy is not touching a racket. like, don't encourage on the court, don't encourage Jimmy hitting. Jimmy is not hitting tennis balls. It took 30 seconds of him being on the court for Frances Tiafoe to get Jimmy to hit tennis balls.
Yeah.
Anyway, It makes me chuckle in hindsight because they were like, under absolutely no circumstances is Jimmy hitting tennis balls. But 30 seconds later, there he was with the racket in hand.
Yeah, this is a pretty much verified story, but not officially verified. That'll paint the picture of what kind of guy Jimmy Butler is when they had the NBA All-Star game in my hometown of Cleveland, when all the athletes and celebrities were out at the trendier, clubbier bars. He went to a soft opening of a country bar, was just hanging out, helping to bartend. So
you could take the guy out of Texas. You can't take the Texas out of the guy, right?
Just chill. Perfect. Well, more with Blair Henley here on Tennis Channel Inside In. Got a couple more stories we're going to get to, but I did want to get your thoughts on some of the Asian swing events going on. The first time the tennis tours have really returned to Asia in a while. And, we know how long this season is, but we also know that there's different reasons for going back. The money is part of it too, the ranking points, but also, and I thought about this today when I was watching Zhang win in his home native of Shanghai. This is an opportunity for people that never really get to see tennis to experience it. Similar to the Golden Swing in South America in February, but this is a chance for people to experience pro tennis and elite level tennis. And in Zhang's case, a hometown kid actually get a big win. So I understand why this is a special time for part of the world.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's one of the struggles when you watch some of these Asian swing tournaments. The crowds don't look huge. And I don't know, I know a lot of the stadiums have those box dividers that I think Madrid also has them. And I also feel the same way when I watch Madrid. It's like, it doesn't look full, but I think there are more people than it looks like there are. I think maybe it's just a matter of finding a little bit of that momentum. And I haven't watched every single match of the Asian swing. So if you saw a match and it was packed, that's great. That's fantastic. I think though, making sure that the players that are making the trip to Asia feel appreciated and watched and loved in that atmosphere. Like, yes, the money's great, but I don't think there's anything quite like playing in front of a really packed stadium with a cool atmosphere. And my hope is that momentum can build again for those Asian events.
Yeah, we do know, too, that it's important to point out that the fan and how people consume sports in that region of the world is a little different. Mm-hmm. I keep going back to the legendary story of when Mike Tyson lost to Buster Douglas. The crowd wasn't oohing and eyeing because that's just not how they interpret sports. Yeah. So it's a little different there. But these draws have been, stacked as well. We see it in some of these players, some of these veterans who've lost early in Andy Murray and Stan Wawrinka's case. But the plus side is, and this happens every time there's an Asian swing, there will be top 10 elite level matchups overnight. You'll wake up to highlights or you'll just stay up all night like a complete night owl. But some of these
you do, Mitch?
No, I'm too old for that now. I can't stay up all night. Got too many responsibilities. But no player in the Asian swing has made more of an impact than what Jannik Sinner did. Just in the past 5 days. There's still the Shanghai Masters coming up, but he wins the China Open for the first time, Blair, and he does it by beating Alcaraz and Medvedev back-to-back matches and throwing up a lot against Grigor Dimitrov in the quarterfinals. So, starting there, I think the trash can throw-up might be part of his repertoire now. It's like a good luck charm.
I mean, from eating a carrot on a changeover, which spawned the Carota boys, to now this. I don't know what comes from vomiting in a trash can on a changeover. I don't know where you go from there, but it's add it to part of the Sinner lore for sure. And I love to see it. He is someone who, I think we talked about it last time we spoke in the spring, but I think he played every single one of his matches, his first 4 rounds at Indian Wells on Stadium 3, which is my court there. And it was sort of a matter of breaking through with him because I do think he's funny and has a great personality, but I do think he's a little bit more on the shy side. So you got to peel back the layers of the onion a bit. And I think people have been seeing that with him throughout the season also. So you have that, things clicking on the court. And also you have sort of the personality, the Gucci campaigns, the bag walking out at the US Open, which it was a beautiful bag. So jealous still to this day. I'm like, is there a consignment for that? Because I would be just in line.
Everyone wants him on there. Yeah,
I love it. I think that he's so fun to watch. When I the coaching mind in me, his hitting track on his ground strokes, particularly on his backhand, is such a thing of beauty. And if I ever have to explain that concept, and for people listening, it's that idea of sort of the straightaway on the racetrack of your stroke. And his straightaway is so long and smooth and steady. He's so balanced on just about every shot. It's really pretty to watch, and it's cool to see him getting the results as well.
So he's always been just so solid on both wings, like exceptional even. And there have been a lot of questions with his game, which is a little unfair because he's so young and all he's accomplished already. But when a guy like Alcaraz exists and then Novak still, extending history making reigns, it's going to happen. There's going to be questions. He came in with the questions of, are you fit enough? He's lost a lot of those heavy matchups. Is he built to beat these top players? Can he finally beat Medvedev? Well, that was the first win in 6 tries. He's up to number 4 in the world. And especially that Alcaraz match, he's just relentless. He basically smothered Alcaraz. And I don't know if there's anyone, even the way Djokovic plays him isn't that style. He is getting to the net. He's finishing points. He's not afraid to go for his shots, Blair, on big moments. And that's easier said than done. This Medvedev match highlighted that same point. A guy who's had his number in a condition that favors the Daniil Medvedev. They played 2 hours, 2 tiebreak sets, no breaks of serve. And yet when it mattered most in those tiebreaks, Sinner, who had some shaky plays in that match, missed a couple overheads, he got the job done. So take the title, and that's a great thing. But beating the best, getting up to 4 in the world, this is going to work wonders for his confidence going into next year and beyond.
I feel like sometimes when you are a player he's incredibly physically gifted and he can run back and forth 1,000 times if he has to, that can also be somewhat of a handicap because it is really hard when it matters most in the tightest moments not to fall back on that. It can be a little bit of a crutch. And so you're exactly right to sort of rewire the way that he's thinking in the biggest moments of the match. That is going to pay dividends down the road. And I love it for him. So cool.
Up to 4, has Shanghai coming up. We'll see. But this is that time of year when you start to plant seeds and build for the future. For Medvedev, I mean, it's not, look, he lost the match he was in, and that's part of tennis, right? I don't think he was going to, go undefeated against Sinner in his career. We'll see how he makes adjustments. The only note I have with Medvedev is there's no one that has the angles that he does. I know everyone's trying, especially social media, some people out there trying to find the perfect angle, watch Medvedev play tennis, because there's nobody that approaches the game like him.
Watching Daniil has actually made me rethink how I teach my kids how to play tennis. That seems strange, but because listen, am I trying to teach the Daniil Medvedev strokes? No, because I don't really think you can. I couldn't even explain it in words how to hit a forehand like Daniil Medvedev. But and granted, his talent level is off the charts, but he just knows where he wants to hit the ball and does physically whatever he needs to do to get the ball to go to that spot. And I think just sometimes we overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
The idea of technique, and same thing with like the Coco Gauff forehand. If you take sort of the technique thoughts out of it and just say, hey, I need the ball to go here. If you are an extremely gifted athlete, often those are the only pieces of the puzzle that you need.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're, in Coco's case, like Brad Gilbert, who's kind of taught her the winning ugly method with 14 straight, but just focus on the positives too. I mean, that's another thing we kind of get bogged down on, what your weaknesses are and how do we turn them up. But there's a lot to be said about just relying on what got you to the dance. Medvedev's movement is especially gifted too. The way he plays, how far back he plays, he's able to get to drop shots. I mean, it's so cliche, just drop shot him to death, but he gets to the ball. I do think, and we were early on the take, both of us, that he's one of the funniest, if not the funniest players on tour. I've also added to that take that I think he needs to blow off steam in that regard, because that has been the one thing, like when he goes a little mental, maybe that's a positive from today. It was 2 tightly contested sets where he wasn't at his best. When he's not been funny, when he's, gone mental, he's kind of lost going away. So I think the humor in a weird way helps him kind of play better and stay locked in.
I'm all for it. If that's going to be Daniil's secret sauce going forward, it's a yes. It's a yes from me. Sign me up.
Yeah. Well, for Carlos, I mean, this is another match where he loses in the semi to Sinner. That head-to-head is now Sinner 4-3. It was a tight first set. Carlos lost kind of going away in the second. The bigger concern is no one's debating the long-term future of Carlos Alcaraz, what he's accomplished and how much is left in the tank. But I think it's fair to bring up, Blair, the point that we're into October. He had his hamstrings wrapped a little bit in this match. And, finishing these years after such a grueling schedule and grueling style he plays, I wonder how he's going to manage his body, his schedule in the future, because last year didn't finish the season. This year lost a tight match where the body kind of gave up on him a little.
I think that's maybe the biggest challenge of this part of the season is just everyone is either literally or figuratively limping to the finish line. And so it is. I think the travel, the wear and tear of the season. I think back, though, to a player like Djokovic, for instance, who at this point in his career had not figured out his body.
Right.
And so I think that there is a learning curve there for sure. And I don't pretend to know all the things that you can do as far as physios are concerned and how, ramping up and ramping down is concerned. I wish I knew more about that. It probably would be great if I could learn at my advanced age, if I could learn more about that. But again, I think that if he has the time to learn, to figure out what works for him, I think that it will become easier to space out his season.
Yeah, and Djokovic is a great example. He figured it out. He mapped out a game plan. He executed it. Rafa is somebody who had and still has the same problem right after the Grand Slam season. Never won an ATP final, struggled in some of the indoor. So we'll see. And there might be a situation where he's going to have to cut it down early and just focus on starting fresh. So we'll see. But still just a lot to love with Alcaraz. I did want to get to the women, though, because, I know your experience with the WTA. The first thing is Aryna Sabalenka is the new number one in this role. And we see the personality every time. We saw her trying to talk Chinese to the fans. It was another precious moment there. But do you think Aryna is built for this role now that she's gotten the number one role and she's professed, look, I'm not trying to give it up anytime soon? How do you think Sabalenka will handle the new role, the new pressures of being world number one?
I think this is the honeymoon period where you're the new world number one and you can kind of say, listen, it was really hard to get here. And for the rest of my life, I'm going to be introduced as a former world number one. And so you could sort of soak it in and enjoy it. I'm going to, again, I don't know where the points are standing right now. So I'm not sure how much of a cushion she has. But I think I would give her a few weeks before she starts to actually think, oh, shoot, like, what do I need to do to actually stay here? So I think that this might be the honeymoon period where there's maybe more freedom to just play like you play, walk out on the court with a little extra. I don't know if there's such thing as a number one swagger, but there would be if I were number one in the world. I would have maybe not external, but internal number one swagger and enjoy that. And she is the thing that I love about Aryna, and I've spent a decent amount of time in interview settings with her this year, whether it's on the court. We also did the Netflix reunion, filmed it in Cincinnati this year. You never know what she's going to give you. And it's extremely refreshing. There is nothing calculated. And I preface this with, I know that as a professional athlete, is it wise to sort of know where your boundaries are when you're in an interview setting? Absolutely. I love with Aryna, though, that you just don't quite know what's going to come out of her mouth. There is an unfiltered way about her that, in my job, sign me up. It's fantastic.
I don't think the opponents, sometimes even herself on the court, know what's coming next in her game and what's there. So it's great. And it's another dynamic personality who is such a great player, great impact on the game. So this role's good. She's in a good position for the year-end number one. I love that that's the next goal. Okay, let's get to the year-end and, take it 1 week at a time. Easier said than done, though. Now Iga's in this new role, Iga Swiatek as the hunter. So that's a different spot. She notched her 60th win of the year, which is a staggering number. But new role reversal there. Iga at number two could actually end up being one of the best things for her, I think, Blair, that she is now hunting. Maybe some of the pressure's off and she could, reset a little bit and try to get back to the basics of just dominating the game.
Yeah, enjoy not having that pressure of the target on your back. I mean, listen, the target is still on her back to some extent in every single match that she plays because of her dominance over the past few years. But this would be the time if you want to start coming in more and making sure that your volleys are maybe more solid than they were in the past. Do it. Now's the time. You don't have to worry about maintaining a position. You can work on improving areas that might not have been as good as you wanted them to be. I love it for her.
Yeah, she's somebody that we know where she is. Her baseline game, very, very strong. She has just got some new challenges, and it's exciting. Coco's come up. She's won 14 straight. Sabalenka's given her matches. We're seeing other players maybe, scratch the surface. I did need your opinion, though, because a very popular player, well-liked on tour, getting that big tournament. What was it like to see Maria Sakkari win in Guadalajara?
And Ons in Ningbo, like both of them, like, because both, let me tell you, it was rough going for them en route to those two titles. No, it made me so incredibly happy. I cannot imagine, listen, there are a lot of perks of being a professional tennis player. The pressure and having people watching and speculating and encouraging and discouraging and criticizing every step of the way, I can't imagine dealing with that. And in particular for Maria, who is a self-professed Twitter stalker. She was aware of all those things that people were saying. And so it made me just so incredibly happy, especially after the US Open and after that press conference that so many of us saw. And I think even if you haven't played professional tennis, I think we all could sort of feel what it would feel like to think, hey, I'm doing all the right things. I can't explain why it's not falling together, but maybe I need to take a step away. You don't know. And I think we've all had those situations in life. So happy for her. And also Barbora Krejcikova winning in San Diego. That was another one. I mean, she had
like your best friend on tour.
who knows all about being a voice of God at the US Open after coming and hanging with me for a night session while we were there. But so again, I think it's one of the best things about tennis that every week is a new story, that it can be rough going, and one match, one win, 1 week can turn everything around. And gosh, Ons at the US Open was not 100%, but quick, because I love a good story. Quick side note, she was waiting in the hallway on Armstrong to go out onto the court. I think it was to play Zhang Qinwen, which match she ended up losing. And she physically, she looked probably better than she had looked in the first few rounds of the tournament. But we're just waiting in the hallway, and I happened to be there waiting for, or I had just finished a flash interview with Andre Rublev. So I was just kind of hanging in the hallway, and it was a warm day in New York, but I was wearing a sweater, as I often do, because I'm always cold and I have a high heat tolerance. And she looked at me. This is like minutes before she walks out to play, I think, her 4th round match at the US Open. Yeah. And she says, Blair, why are you wearing a sweater? And I said, Ons, I am always cold and I have a high heat tolerance. What can I say? And she said, have you seen a doctor about that? Like, have you had your thyroid checked? And I said, you know what? Not yet. And as she's asking me this, she's like inspecting my thyroid region. And again, would that happen with any other player minutes before walking out on the court? Absolutely not. But that is why we love Ons Jabeur, because she is who she is, and she is such a gem in every way. So incredibly happy for her too.
Ons has been battling those injuries. Her approval rating's high, so it's good to see what she was able to accomplish winning over in Asia. We always have been open about it, always riding for the Greeks and Maria Sakkari. And, Barbora, I don't know if a lot of surfing in Czech Republic. I'm not sure.
Well, does she have one surfboard now or two? I haven't asked. Did she get one for doubles also?
I think it was just singles, but maybe they gave her two. They might not have been able to carry that on. I don't know.
I feel like if anybody's going to try to find a body of water to use said surfboard, it's Barbora. She is a lover of new experiences. That's for sure.
Well, I wanted to finish this up with Blair Henley. We got to get to some of the more, juicy slash serious stuff. And this is where I urge every guest now, because this show should come with a disclaimer. Be careful here. But no, in all seriousness, there's been some other news and notes on the WTA. I wanted your quick reaction, quick analysis to this whole performance by issue,
Mm.
because it's kind of blown up. And I'll just add to what I've said last week. There is something to be said about how it's kind of cool in a way that we're in an era where people are speaking up. Because in the past, I feel like 10, 15, 20 years ago, people would have just gone with it. That's it, right or wrong. I think it's, there's disagreement between the players. Rybakina didn't feel it was fair to get a bye for Zachary and Garcia coming from Mexico over to Asia. Some players disagree. Some players say just go out and play. And I think it's good we're having these discussions, because I don't even think that would have happened 20 years ago.
I think it's great. I mean, you had Petra Kvitova talking about scheduling on social media last week, which again, these are things that, and even Petra said, she's like, I don't often say anything, but this is something I want to say something about. And that is, I think, one of the pluses of social media and being able to be in charge of what people hear from you at any point. You're not having to wait for a press conference necessarily to say what you want to say. There are two things that can be true, right? I think that I see Rybakina's point. I also see the side of things that says, the tennis schedule is bonkers. And if, last year at the WTA finals, Iga was particularly vocal, if I'm remembering correctly, about the fact that, you had the WTA finals in Fort Worth, and then they were flying to wherever Billie Jean King Cup finals were.
Yeah, she spoke out on that.
Yes. Yeah. So if this is the reality of tennis life, are these really tough travel windows. And so I think I see why it's necessary. I also see why it would be frustrating. So I see both sides. That's not a great answer, but I think I see both sides of the coin on that one.
No, it's something to consider, especially for these events that want top level players. How are you going to do it if the players have that right to just say, no, I'm not going to be able to play both? So still coming and still interesting, but Rybakina, another one that doesn't normally speak up. So I think it's good that the players are using their voice, even if there's disagreement there. And then, of course, we have to, it's this time of year, we're starting a little early with the coaching carousel, but there was a juicy one, an interesting one where, Wim Fissette is going to leave Qinwen Zhang to go back to Naomi Osaka. And I wanted to just kind of clarify where I am at this point.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, so coaches have the right, and we know you can look at who he's coached. There's a lot of players, there's a lot of movement. Players will fire a coach any given day. We understand that. Coaches have the right. The contracts are specific to, promote that sort of thing where you can leave and you can go and coach somewhere else. We don't know what happened between the player and the coach. There's been some translations that I'm not sure are completely accurate, Chinese to English. That said, I will just keep it as point blank as possible, where coaches have the right to leave players and go to whoever is offering them the best deal, in this case financially, to work with someone But there is a right way and a wrong way to do this. And again, I'm not saying that Fissette did anything wrong, because I was not there.
Mm-hmm.
But there are allegations that would be a little unfortunate and would be less becoming of a professional and just a human being if, again, it's all alleged, he kind of left Qinwen high and dry. So that's my take in it. Don't ever have a problem with coaches leaving, because you got to support yourself in a really cutthroat industry. But there are ways to do it, and we'll see if more info comes out, if there was some low-hanging fruit or some, less than ideal ways of leaving.
Yes. And in one of those translations, Qinwen said that he led her to believe that he felt that there were issues in their relationship. And she essentially said that there weren't any, to my knowledge. We never had disagreements. It was a harmonious relationship. And that is, I think, where I struggle. If I, putting myself in the player's shoes, if a coach said to me, listen, this makes more sense for me and my family. I am so sorry. You're wonderful, and I wish you all the best. But this is a decision I have to make for myself. Would I be happy? No. Would I be personally crushed? No. And the sense that I get coming out of this Fissette Zhang split is that there is maybe, like, she's personally hurt.
Yeah.
And I think that if you just put everything on the table in black and white, this is a better move for me. I'm so, so sorry. I feel like in theory, it shouldn't lead to that personal hurt. And that makes me sad. I would never want a player to feel that. And that's the feeling that I've gotten from this situation. So that part's a bummer.
Right. In breaking up in any area of life, it's not going to be great, but you just hope that there's, a straightforward approach. Cards are on the table.
Mhm.
There's no misleading going on. And again, we'll see if more info comes out, but that's the part I agree with you. That's where, like, if you're going to go back to a player you've coached, the player of Naomi Osaka's stature, just be upfront about it. And I'm not saying he wasn't, but it doesn't look too good from Quinn Wynn's point of view, who has a lot of potential too. That's the other part of this is that, I think she's a bona fide top 10 player in the future. So whoever gets to coach her and work with her long term is going to get a heck of a player.
She was a bright spot of my U.S. Open, by the way. I had never spoken to her before, and thanks to her awesome agent Mariah, and I was like, "Hey, listen, if we request her for the World Feed for a feature, do we think that she would say yes to that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think that would be great." Sat down with her for 5 minutes, ended up doing an on-court interview with her the next day. And she leaned right into her Queen Wen nickname on the court, which again, I think is great. Obviously, we know her as sort of an international superstar, but in the US, I don't think a ton of people know who she is yet. And so those sorts of moments where a player shows personality, priceless. Loved it.
Well, I got a couple quick hitters with Blair Henley before we wrap up. Just some quick reactions, some funny things, and some, not too much serious stuff. We kind of got through the heavy hitters. I did want to say prayers up to Jen Brady, unfortunate with the injury dealing again. Hopefully she's better. I mean, that was just brutal to see.
Yes, I mean, I'm right with you there. Sweet Jenny. Man, it was good to see her at the US Open, and tennis is better with her in it.
Yeah. Some good sound clips too as well. Some of the social media posts. I mean, the reaction.
She's a content machine without even trying. It's really unbelievable.
Had you ever seen, speaking of UCLA Bruins, have you ever seen a player give another player after a match a piggyback off the court like Mackie McDonald did?
No, but Mackie is another hidden gem who is maybe, he's not the loudest guy in the room, but he is really funny and earnest and smart and all the great things. And I loved that people were like, "Oh my gosh, Mackie being sweet." I'm like, yes, that's Mackie. He's funny and sweet and great. And that was a really fun moment.
Yeah, he's hilarious too. A low-key hidden gem and having a little glow up in Asia. So it's nice to see, the rest of the world kind of get to see that. I wanted to ask you, you've done tennis, but you've also covered other events, other sports. What was Katie Couric like at the pickleball slam? Did you guys trade any inside info?
The highlight of the pickleball slam for me. And granted, am I biased because I see tennis people often? Yes, but she, just quick anecdote, was in charge of flipping the coin for, I think it was one of the doubles games that they played, and I was facilitating that on court, and it's getting close to the end of the previous game, and my boss said to her, "Katie, do you have the coin?" And she said, "I do. It's right here in my bra." And I thought she was joking. Cue us on court saying, "Okay, Katie, are you ready?" She pulls that coin right out of her bra and flips it in front of, who is it? Michael Chang, John McEnroe, Andre Agassi, and Andy Roddick. So she was hilarious. She knew my name within 2 minutes and said, "Let's get a picture." And I was like, "Really?"
Wow.
Because I never in a million years would have asked her for a photo, especially when I'm working. But she asked, which I'm sure is something that she does, and it's incredibly charming. And she could do it 1,000 times, and it would still be charming. But it was charming to me, and I was like, "That's so nice." And now I have a picture with Katie Couric, so she was fantastic and so funny and gracious and wonderful.
Wow, that's special stuff right there. Good to hear. Another new friend, another new celebrity friend.
One can only hope.
And then, of course, I'd ask you, just as we put a bow on this episode, you're part of the Fed Cup, I guess, coverage, unofficial team, Billie Jean King Cup, I should say. Coaching change is interesting. On one hand, it's, sad to see Catherine Rinaldi leave that position, still very much involved with USTA and women's tennis in America. But Lindsay Davenport, coworker of mine, and a Fed Cup legend in her own right now, coaching the Billie Jean King Cup team. is very exciting.
Very exciting. I think, again, Kathy was fantastic and I think very well liked, well respected by the players. And as you said, will still be very involved. I have personally loved Kathy. I joke that I need her to be my personal stylist because she also always looks, hair outfits, always looking great, especially if you like to dress often in red, white, and blue. But that's, again, story for another day. Love Kathy. But yeah, I mean, the gravitas of Lindsay Davenport, it doesn't get much better than that. She obviously has the coaching chops, which is a big part of that. I think the players want to know when they're at those events that they are going to have a captain that they're learning from. So I think that that's a huge box to check. That's incredible. She's matter of fact, which I personally love. She calls it like she sees it, which is great. I think being a captain is not easy. I think making those roster decisions would be really hard. And she just seems to have a really clear-cut approach to life, which I am envious of because I'm the worst decision maker in history. So I think she will thrive, and I think the players are pumped about it as well. So you can't ask for much more than that.
I can't wait. And that photo that keeps circulating, gotta be, it's like that. It's the iconic women's tennis photo, right? The Fed Cup of her, the Williams sisters, and Monica Seles. Like that should be hanging in every USTA affiliated thing.
I think I'm trying to remember. I think it was maybe for the Hall of Fame, but I did an interview with Lindsay, and she was like, "I think I have like one of my trophies. It's under the bed."
Wimbledon. What is this?
I mean, that picture is probably in a shoebox in the attic somewhere, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, it's the coolest picture ever."
Well, Blair, this has been fun. You're always generous with your time. I do want to end with, what you have coming up. Maybe even calling some more matches with Mike Cation on the Challenger Tour. I think that might be in your cards from what I've heard.
Yes, I am hoping to get to Champaign again to get some more commentary reps. It's something that I have done some of. I would like to do more of this year. I did sideline reporting for NCAAs and also for Houston. So great experience there, but I'd love to get more experience in the booth, so to speak, or if you're at a challenger under a tent in the open air or in an indoor facility, whichever way it goes. But Mike Cation has been so generous, and I in June went to Tyler, Texas, and got to get my first taste of challenger commentary. My first ever solo call was Alexis Galarneau, the Canadian and along with Gabriel Diallo, the saviors of Canadian Davis Cup this fall. Absolutely incredible work from them. And Alexi has been, what a gem. I mean, he was such a big deal in Toronto, and then he has a great Davis Cup, one to watch for sure, and just a really sweet human. So again, salt of the earth people at Challengers. And it's really cool to see sort of the origin stories and Mike multiple times this year with, Chris Eubanks and Ben Shelton and guys like this who are having this incredible success at the highest level. He's like, they're my kids all grown up. And so it really is, it's sort of the hero origin stories, and a lot of them begin at the Challengers. So I hope to do some of that. Again, recovering from Laver Cup still, where I do the behind the scenes cell phone footage or cell phone content, which is not something I do anywhere else, but man, it gets my creative juices flowing at Laver Cup. I feel very fortunate to be able to do that role there and have guys like Andrei Rublev who are just content machines just by being themselves. It's fantastic.
He really is. And it has to be crazy, right? When Roger walks into a room, it's just like the world has to stop a little bit.
Yes. Forevermore. The Roger aura is a real thing. And yet he is so normal. Like, we all know the dorky side of Roger Federer. We've seen it on social media. We've seen it on tennis courts. He is very normal and also relatable. But he has this just incredible aura, and it's going to be part of Laver Cup for years and years to come. So again, quick side note on that. I know people get hung up on what is Laver Cup. If you can not worry about that, it is one of the events that I would recommend to any tennis fan who asks me, hey, you've been to a lot of events, which one would you buy tickets to? There is nothing like Laver Cup as a fan experience. So 2 thumbs up
Yeah.
from me.
As long as the players all know what Laver Cup is, that's all that really matters, is that they're on the same page.
Fair point, Mitch. Fair point.
Yeah. Yeah, and Roger, I mean, I think it was in Chris Cleary's book where America's quote was like, "This kid was singing Backstreet Boys a couple of years ago. Now he's #1 player in the world." So, yeah, we know about the dorky side. Blair, this has been a blast. You're generous with your time. You're also, very multifaceted, and a good lesson to people to take different roles and different chances and try to just do what you can to make it as you have in the tennis world. So, thank you again for coming on Inside In. Best of luck with this, and also with the hedgehog. I know it's been difficult, and we've seen the updates. So, anything for the kids, right?
Anything for the kids. I actually saw an Instagram video today about some sort of cow that can be domesticated. I'm like a baby, like a mini cow. Who knows? Who knows? At this point, I'm committed to taking the road less traveled, Mitch. So whether it's in my work or in my domestic pet ownership. So.
Wow. Well, Blair, always a blast. Blair Henley, thanks for coming on Tennis Channel Inside In.
Thanks, Mitch.